Hey, good morning, and welcome to another Digital Jamaica Live. I'm your host, Kadia Francis, and today I have a very special guest on the show, Matthew Dawkins. He is a Jamaican writer and poet, a rising star in the literary world, and he's going to be talking to us about, his successes using Wattpad and everything that has come out of finding early success on that platform as a Black Caribbean male writer. Because when you look at Wattpad, that has millions of writers, readers, and you look at the persons who are successful on that platform, they don't look like Matthew very often, right? So it is actually a big deal that he has been able to, rise above all of that and emerge as a super talent on that platform. And we're going to be talking to Matthew this morning. But before we do, I want to thank my sponsor for making the Digital Jamaica Live show possible. G5 Cyber Security, protecting your business from cyber attack and breaches. Visit www.g5cybersecurity.com to see if you are compliant with data privacy laws locally and internationally. Some of you are going online as e-commerce businesses and other small businesses. You're asking for information for persons. You're not protecting the data properly. You're not even storing the data properly. So make sure that you are compliant. Visit the website and find out. So just one announcement really before we jump into the conversation with Matthew. And why am I so low? Hold on, guys. I need to adjust my seat. Here we go. Here we go. This is better. Just one announcement before we jump into the conversation with Matthew. So I am launching a free, I don't want to say free, complimentary video series on, how do you position your brand in the digital space to grow in the digital space, because social media is broken. And if you are using a mainly social media approach to marketing your business in the digital space, I'm sure you're having problems right now. And it doesn't even matter which social media platform. So come next week, I'm going to be starting a six week video course, and it's email only. So every week you'll get another video in your email talking about a framework that I created a couple years ago to help build the Digital Jamaica and the Digital Disruption Agency brand. It's called the VRT framework, Visibility, Relevance, Timing framework. I'm just going to share with you what I did, how I've been doing it, what this framework means, how it works, and how it can help you if you're a small creator, a small brand, a small business who use the online space to market, to get the word out there, to generate leads, to get sales, that kind of thing. Then I think you'd be interested in this. So look out for some more information on that. Follow the Digital Jamaica pages across social media for more information where you can register. As I said, it's complimentary. There's no charge to it. I just want to share with you guys what I've learned, because I've been getting so many. I've gotten a lot of messages from persons asking, hey, I'm having a difficulty with this. What do you recommend? Blah blah blah. And so I'm like, okay, instead of answering individual persons, why not just put something together and share with everybody? So look out for that, guys. Good morning, Kevin. So guys, let's welcome Matthew Dawkins. Matthew was recently featured in the, and I want to share this with you guys. Matthew was recently featured in Goodreads. So Goodreads has like an annual publication that they do called the like the 2021-2022 class of debut young adult novels. and his debut novel that comes out in September, and he's going to tell you some more about that. Until We Break, here it is featured on this list. Now that's a big main. Again, Goodreads is a huge kind of like a social media platform for people who are, love reading, who are into reading, and for them to recommend Matthew, again, who's not really yet an author in his own right. He has written 6 works across Wattpad that has garnered over 380,000 views across the 6 works. They include stories and poems. But the story that really, threw him into stardom, if you want to say, is this one. Until We Break, formerly Wicked, Wild, Wonderful. That kind of went viral on Wattpad. And that viral push from his readers on Wattpad made him noticeable. Wattpad noticed that, hey, here's this young guy getting a lot of views, and a lot of people talking about him, generating buzz. And so he was featured in the as a 2018, he got a 2018 Watty Awards. He was featured on that list, which again is a huge feat. And since then, he's kind of been, making the rounds in the literary space, and he's being widely recognized as an upcoming talent within the literary space. And I think that's amazing, Matthew. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Kadia. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I first noticed you, I want to say a year or two ago, and I jumped in your DMs and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Because, Wattpad, for a very long time, there's a particular perception about Wattpad that I had, where it's only, them kind of sleazy, kind of romance, kind of soft core kind of novels that these people write, and you're like, okay, so it wasn't even a platform that was anywhere in my, that was even on my radar. And then,
Mhm.
first of all, Amise, anybody black, Amise, especially if they're Caribbean, especially if they're Jamaican. So once I saw that you were over there kicking ass on Wattpad, I'm like, yeah, I'm like this. I need to talk to this guy. So tell us, Matthew. Well, first, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Matthew Dawkins. My debut novel, Until We Break, is coming on September 20th. Right now, I'm living in London, Ontario, in Canada, and I'm
Yeah,
pursuing my Bachelor's of Arts in English Writing and English Literature, if you can believe that,
yeah.
surprisingly, shockingly. And I'm going to my 4th year, so this is my final year before I graduate, and yeah, that's me.
Yeah, you're doing big things, and I think, is it your campus that recognize you as student writer in residence 2022 2023? Yeah, make up
Yes,
yourself,
yes.
make up yourself.
Uh,
But guys, Matthew is not one of those, oh, he's Jamaican but he's like first generation. No, Matthew was born in Jamaica, raised in Jamaica. Matthew, tell us a little bit about your background in Jamaica. You went to a prominent high school and you discovered your love of writing. Tell us about that.
mhm. For sure. So yes, born and raised in Jamaica. I was born, I was born? University Hospital, of course, like a lot of people. And then I lived for most of my life in Portmore before we moved, still in St. Catherine, but to Spanish Town. And then I went to Queen's Prep. From Queen's Prep, I went to Jamaica College. Yes, I'm a JCO boy from Jamaica College. I went to Wilmer's sixth form, and yeah, I started writing on Wattpad when I was at JC. Actually,
Mhm.
a lot of my literature teachers can attest to that, like me falling in love and loving storytelling and writing and stuff like that. And I really got a huge push from them, and that's where that started. And then I began to really like take that a lot more seriously because I had such a great support system. And then when I moved into Wilmer's sixth form, that those teachers especially because I was taking K literature at that point, which is a lot
Mhm.
more serious, a lot more intense, and we had like a different teacher for each genre, a teacher for drama, a teacher for prose, and a teacher for poetry as well. So
Mhm.
that was even a bigger community for me, and I really respected those teachers as well. And so in my studies and everything, and I think especially what I really valued from being in Jamaica and learning literature there, which I took for granted until I came to Canada and really got to see the world, was that we were really introduced to a lot of great Black authors,
Yeah.
Jamaican, Caribbean, African, etc. I didn't, I don't, I think I took that for granted because a lot of people that I've met along my writing journey, especially Black, have been so predisposed to predominantly white authors and
White.
white
Yeah.
authorship.
Mhm.
And for me, I was like, how could you not read a Chimamanda? How could you not read a Lorna Goodison and Derek Walcott? Like, those people are the people for me that really set a huge foundation and precedent for me to be able to tackle Black issues in a really meaningful way. And so that's what I really took from my high school experience. And that's what growing up in Jamaica looks like for me. And that's how kind of writing began to shape not only high school, but university and onwards.
So, where do you think the interest in writing, come from? And when did you know you were good at it?
That's a good question. Interesting writing. I wish I could give a really solid answer. This is what I'll say. I'll say that I always loved stories and storytelling. Always, always, always. Growing up, loved reading and like especially story time in like kindergarten and up to grade 4. That was it for me. Not a subject, but that was why I went to school, just to be engaged in reading and stories, especially. And I remember exactly when I was in seventh grade, first form. I was in math class and I was reading a particular book. And I think this is what really
In math
sparked it for me. I
class?
remember, yeah. Can you believe me not paying attention in math class? I know, shocking. Who would have thought? So I was not paying attention. I was there flipping through, but I didn't really care about math at that point. So then I was flipping through and I was reading in the back of the class, living my life. And I remember I read a particular line. I wish I could remember what the line was. For the life of me, I can't. But what I do remember is that I read that line and it really inspired me to start writing. I remember I read it and I said to myself, this is the way how I'm feeling right now. That's how I want other people to feel
Yeah.
when they read what I've written.
Yeah.
Because it was such an indescribable, powerful feeling for me. And so that's what really kickstarted, okay, maybe this is something I want to do.
Yeah.
And then from 7th grade, moving on, I don't know if I ever really got to a point where I was like, oh, I'm good at it. I think for me, what helped me, especially growing in the Wattpad space and being able to publish my work online, was that I had to really be comfortable with the fact that maybe I'm not even that good at it. Maybe I'm not gonna get the fame, the money, the glory, the recognition. Maybe I will never get any of that. But this is what I love to do. I have a real passion for this. And so that's why I'm doing it in the first place. So I don't think I've ever gotten to a point where I'm like, oh, I'm so good at this, so I'm gonna keep doing it. I think it's for me, it's just like this is what I love to do. And if other people love that with me, then I'm happy to take them on a journey.
Do you remember which book that was?
Yes, I believe it was Clockwork Angel or Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. It's a YA novel, YA title.
Okay. It's interesting because you said something earlier and I've never really considered it. When you said, well, growing up in the Caribbean in Jamaica, we were mostly exposed to black writers, black authors, black novels. When
Mhm.
you think about it, back in high school, I'm thinking back now and I'm running through all the books that I've read in high school through my mind, and a good, I would say 80-90% of them were from black authors, and there was a healthy mix of um Caribbean authors in
Mhm.
there as well. And one of my favorite was Jamaica Kincaid. She was one of my favorite, and one of my favorite books growing up, in high school was The Wooing of Beppo Tate. I to
Mm.
this day I think that's the funniest book I've ever read in my life. But what kind of stories were you interested in growing up? Were you just generally interested in reading and just stories in general, or were there particular stories that kind of grabbed you?
I think in just general, I just love stories. I love being able to just step into different worlds and read through different perspectives. That's what really grabbed me. So any story, any book I could take up, that as long as it was fiction, I was taking it up straight away. I think for me, the only thing that was really, really new was stepping into poetry.
Mhm.
That I started doing that when I got exposed to that when I was taking C-Sec literature in fourth form. my literature class. And for me, like many of us, I can probably assume, poetry is very different. You know, there are a lot of ideas about poetry, like what does this even mean, or like stuff like that. Like it's not a very like accessible genre of writing for a lot of different reasons that I could go on and on and on about. But that's just the way that it is, and that's just the tradition of the genre. But for me, being able to step into that confidently, analyze it, take time with it, sit with poetry, that was what was very, very, very brand new to me. And so that's kind of the newest form of writing that I've like adapted.
Okay, poetry. So you said you started out on Wattpad when you were at, was it JC or Woolman's?
JC, yeah.
When you were, what was your first story that you published to Wattpad?
That's a good question. I'd say I had. I'm really going back. I'm really going back. Funny enough, I published a story that is not currently on my profile, and that will never see the light of day again. I kind of don't talk about it. I won't even give you the name because I don't want it to even be out there. But that was probably the first one, and that was in also I think 2015, 2016. And then I took another step, and then I wrote a series of short stories called For My Beloved,
Yes,
and
that's
that was
what
in
it
2016, I believe. Yeah, that
was.
was the official first one.
So you didn't like the first one. What was wrong with the first one? The one that shall not be named. What was wrong with that one?
It was so bad, Katie. It was so bad. There was just so much.
But that was your first
aliens,
one.
there was magic, and then there was like war. There was just too much happening. I was like, this. I'm glad that I was self-aware enough to stop before I kept going and realized that this was just not it, and I really just reevaluated. But
Yeah, but why did you choose Wattpad as the vehicle to self publish? Because you see a lot of people, you know, putting out their writers, and there's one thing I like about digital is that there are no gatekeepers anymore. So there's no literary critic or anybody to say, oh, this is not a good story, so we're not going to put that out to the public, or any publishing house saying, okay, well, no, you have to change this story and make it more about this because the audience, you have the freedom to write what you want to write in the way that you want to write it and share it with your audience, who then decides if it's good or if it's not good. It's the audience that kind of decides that. So that's the beauty about platforms like Wattpad. But again, Wattpad, they kind of have a little reputation for being a little bit of sleazy, But, so why did you choose that particular platform to put your work on?
well, I mean, it's basically for all the reasons that you said. Like, there's no gatekeepers really. I'm able to write the story that I want to write, how I want to write it. And I think also for me, it took also the pressure off because, I mean, traditional publishing, there's publishing houses, and then there's this huge team, and there's this huge management, and it's taken very, very seriously. And as you said before, we're like trying to get an audience, and then we're competing against other titles. And I didn't necessarily have that. And I also felt really comfortable writing on Wattpad because I was a reader first. I was reading on Wattpad, I think maybe like 2014, I want to say. So years before that. And even though I know Wattpad has that reputation, I personally read a lot of really, really amazing work. Like some of the books that I love to this day are on Wattpad. Like I still go back and I'm like, that was an incredible novel. So I knew that Wattpad could be so much more than what people thought it was. And so that combined, so that amazing like books that were set before me combined with accessibility of the platform and being able to just write whatever I wanted and having that freedom were I think the two major things for me that was like, this is what I want to do, and I think this is like where I want to take it.
Yeah. So you were reading before you started publishing on the platform. So and when at what point did you publish, or better yet, at what point did you start writing Wicked Wild Wonderful?
I believe that was 2018, I want to say. I think. And I started writing that on my own because I knew that when I started writing Wattpad, the best way to grow was to publish serially, so like weekly. And I wanted to have chapters in the bank and really discover and make sure that I knew the story that I wanted to tell beforehand. And yes, I wrote like a couple chapters beforehand before I started publishing. But I think it was 2018, I believe, yeah. Or 2019. 2018, I'd say.
Okay, and when did you realize that, okay, whoa, this particular work that I've published is getting big. It's getting the views. It's it going from 2K to 4K, then you reach 50K, 100K, now you're at over 200,000 views. What was that like?
Oh wow. I think it was just very surreal because, as I said before, I'm the type of writer that I don't necessarily write for an audience. I write because I think there's a story that I want to tell, and I write because I think there's an important thing that I want to say. As I was saying, I got very content, I think is the word that I want to use, if nothing came from this. So I wasn't
Mhm.
expecting anything. So I think I was just so speechless when the
Yeah.
numbers started jumping. And I remember I really realized that this was bigger than me when I won the Watty Award in 2018.
Yeah, because the same year you published that book, you won the award.
I know. I'm still speechless. I did not see that coming. I remember Wattpad was announcing like, so you enter your story, and I entered not thinking anything. I was like, might as well.
Yeah.
And then there's the long list, and I was on the long list. And there's the short list, and I was on the short list. And I remember I came home from school, and my notifications were blowing up, and everybody was like, "Congratulations!" Da, 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 da. And I just couldn't believe it. So I think that was a huge moment for me. And then I think another moment was when I was nearing. I think the book was not done yet, but it was probably close to being done, and that was 2019. And
Mm.
Wattpad featured me like on the homepage for Black
Yeah.
History Month, and they sent a photographer to my school, and we were taking pictures, and I was like up on
Bit,
the
bit,
whole
bit.
month. And that, so that was another surreal experience where I was like, yo,
Yeah.
like I didn't think this would be a thing, but it's kind of a thing.
It's
And
kind of
obviously
a
the
thing
publishing was
thing.
another huge one.
Yeah,
Mm.
because to be on the cover, no, granted they did it for Black History Month because they're inclusive. Granted, we take the win anywhere we get the win. So you're
Exactly.
featured on the cover of Wattpad. I know more people because now you're a big deal because you're on the cover. I know more people see you. I know you're getting more reason. You're like, you know what? I'm gonna publish this as a novel. How did you make the transition from Wattpad superstar in like literally months? How did you make that transition? Because you've been on the platform a while and then you dropped this story, it blew up. You won a Watty Award that very year the story dropped and it blew up. And now your book is everywhere and it hasn't even been officially published yet. How did you make the transition from Wattpad author to author in your own right with a book that is
Hmm.
published that everybody's talking about and already getting critical acclaim, and it hasn't even been officially published yet? How did that happen?
Well, I remember actually, so all of this, as I said, the book was happening on Wattpad, and Wattpad reached out to me actually.
Mhm.
They were like, hey, we want to talk to you about something. Can we give you a call? And I was like, yeah, sure. Not thinking anything of it. And they announced it. They were like, hey, like, we've read your work. We think it's amazing. It's personally really resonates with people, and we want to publish you. And I remember the excitement. I was like, I couldn't believe it because publishing was also I knew it was something that I wanted to do. But as I
Mhm.
kind of mentioned before, traditional publishing has a lot of steps, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
and a lot of people in it as well. And I think it's the type of story that I was telling also, I think, was very different from what we often see in traditional
yeah,
publishing. And
yeah.
so that was just so surreal. So it was a dream come true. So I immediately jumped on that experience. We talked through it and everything. We got through what we wanted to get from a novel and how we wanted to probably change it when it came to transitioning from an online platform to a physical book.
Mhm.
And then the journey started, and that was 2019.
Mhm. Right. So, and I know you have a book coming up, but I want to go back to something you said just now about the stories you're telling not being traditional. Because when you think of Caribbean authors, Caribbean authors, the stories are amazing, the stories are deep and heartfelt and sometimes painful. There's a lot of pain
Hmm.
in Caribbean writing. And of course,
Hmm.
given our history and our background, that's understandable. But your characters are a little bit different. There's an element of science fiction-y, kind of fantasy, and kind of characters that are, it's like they know who they are as a character
Mhm.
and they're very much in touch with that inner person that they are, but they're also not struggle. There is not an element of struggle necessarily. Of course,
Mhm.
there are things that they're grappling with in their journey, but it's not struggle. And it's so refreshing to have a Caribbean writer who creates characters that are relatable across borders and that don't struggle. Oh my God, can we not struggle in every single story? Was that a conscious thing on your part, or is it just this is just the kind of writing style that I like? Did it develop over time? I mean, what's the rationale behind creating characters like that?
I think for me, it was more of suiting the characters to the story that I wanted to tell and what
Mhm.
would fit the best messaging. And when you think about that, I think about my character Naomi, who is the protagonist in Until We Break,
Mhm.
and she's actually a first generation Jamaican, but and her
Yeah.
mom is Jamaican.
Mhm.
And she's that type of character where she knows exactly who she is and who she wants
Yeah.
to be. And I think even though like throughout the course of the novel that kind of changes and evolves, and I think that's a good thing, and I think we should always leave room for
Mhm.
evolving and character development of ourselves. So that's what I want to include. But I think I really value that in her specifically because it was very important to me that as I'm writing like a black female Jamaican character, that I was portraying her in a way that I think was not only powerful and strong, but self assured because I wanted her to at the same time, even though she was experiencing a lot of some would say traumatic events
Mhm.
and very like serious situations. At the same time, she had the potential and the power and the ability to overcome all of that, and that's the kind of that's what I want people to take away from the story. Really,
Mhm.
was how to overcome those types of situations and how we can still like evolve and change and grow as people.
Mhm. Right, and her situation as again is she's a Jamaican character, right, with Jamaican parentage, but her struggles are a little bit different from what a typical
Very,
Jamaican female character's
very.
struggle would be. Her
Mm-hmm,
thing is completely different in terms of how you framed her and that particular issue that she's struggling with in the
mm-hmm,
novel. I think she's a dancer, a ballet dancer, is it? Right,
mm-hmm,
and there's some issues with that, but there's another character in there who's also going through his own struggle, and these two characters kind of collide at some point. But again, even though there's issues that they're going with, it's not steeped in the traditional historical background that these stories from the Caribbean is usually steeped in, and that is where I'm coming from in terms of
mm-hmm.
was that intentional, or you're just like, no, it's really just about this particular story.
Yeah, the latter for sure. Just about
Yeah,
that particular story and really honing into because that struggle wasn't necessarily a struggle that I wanted to tackle at that time and in that
yeah.
story with those specific characters. And so I was really honing into what's the best way to talk about what I want to talk about, which is coming of age and self discovery.
Right. So a lot of your work is about coming of ages, and your poem sometimes is like a sharp stick to the side because you read them and you're like, "Whoa, are you okay, Matthew? Is everything all right?" So you have your stories that are less about struggle and more about personal validation and triumphing over mostly personal struggles, not necessarily with a
Mhm.
historical context, but personal struggles and growing in that, as you said, coming of age. And then you have your poems that are like, who hurt you though? Like, what that was it a conscious juxtaposition between the stories and the poem? Are you a different writer when you're writing poem than you are when you're writing stories? Is it a different outlook? Because these two things are different.
Yeah, I think for me it's not a different. I don't think I'm a different writer. I'd say, but
Yeah.
I do think that my themes and concerns are different. I think
Mm.
I select when I'm writing novels and prose and more long form creative works, I select themes and concerns and messaging that will suit that kind of extensive conversation.
Yeah.
And I think I see that more as like a journey, almost like a dialogue, a very
Mhm.
like lengthy type of experience. And that's so it's a lot more nuanced. But when it comes to writing poetry, even though of course poems can be long as well, for
Mhm.
me personally, the poems that hit the hardest for me are the poems that say multiple things, but say those multiple things all at the same time in a very brief and succinct way. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of how it differs. I say I'm the same person, same writer. I approach them a little bit differently, and that
Yeah.
difference is just I approach them with the knowledge that these are two genres that for me suit different ends. And
Mhm.
so I go into it thinking, okay, with that end in mind, this is how I want to share a type of work.
Mhm. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
because I see the comments under your poems all the time, and they're very deep. What do you call those? What do you call the? I don't I oh Lord, sorry. What I remember, because there's a name for poems with like 5 lines or something like that.
Haiku,
Haiku. Are these haikus, or because I don't know.
they aren't haiku.
There are haikus. Okay, but they're very short and they're very poignant and they're very and you're like, that was a kick in the face. But then when it's something that you can go back and you can read multiple times, and every time you look it over, it comes at you differently.
Mhm.
How do you feel when people interpret your work? Because like I just said, your work, that one piece of poem can be interpreted in so many different ways. Do you have an intention, like, do you write it saying this is how I want this to be seen, or this is the impact that I want to have, or do you just write and allow your audience to take from it what they want to take from it? Is there intention in your writing?
That's a really good point. This kind of goes back to when I was at Wilmer's, when I was doing KF literature. And shout out to Miss McCleary. She's no longer at Wilmer's. I think she just left, but she was a huge inspiration for me. And I vividly remember when we were analyzing a lot of poems one year,
Mm,
and we were all arguing over what is the writer's intent, like what were they trying to say here, da 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 da. And then some people were trying to bring forth like what the writer said about the work versus what we were saying, what we took from it. And
mhm,
then she taught us something very important that has always stuck with me, which was that as soon as a writer writes something and sends it out into the world, it doesn't matter what they were trying to say. What matters is what they said, what is actually existing and what's actually there. It
mhm,
enters the public domain in a way that everybody can interpret. And sometimes, even though they think they might have wanted to say something, the truth is there are so many different layers that probably even they didn't even realize. I mean, subconscious levels, etc., etc. And it's still meaningful in that way for different people. And so for me, I do write with the hope and with the I want to say expectation that people will take from the poem what I want them to take from it.
mhm,
So people will analyze it and read it and understand it and see the metaphors for what the metaphors are and see what's probably more real for what that is. But the truth is, I'm also very, very content with the fact that people will interpret it in the way that they want to interpret it and in the way that suits them. And I'm okay with that. And I've come across a lot of people misinterpreting, in my opinion, my poems
mhm.
and kind of drawing meanings that I'm like, and that's not what I was trying to say. Like I think it kind of went over your head there, but at the same time, I have to be okay with that. And I think
Yeah,
that's the beauty about creative writing in general is that it hits people in different ways, and we're all able to walk away from it with something completely new and different. So
yeah. So when you're because as I said before, your characters tend to be a little bit outside of what we normally expect with Caribbean authors and how they write. Was that when you were thinking about, okay, I know you said that you've been inspired by a lot of Caribbean authors, but your work is different. So what was the underlying thing, do you think, that inspired you from these Caribbean authors, even though how you develop characters and talk about and tell stories are different? You've basically carved out a path for yourself as a Caribbean author, even though you've been inspired by Caribbean authors. What was that underlying thing that you think inspired you, though?
I think the underlying thing that inspired me was the fact that I could do it.
Mm.
Seeing people that were from the same background as me, look like me, talk like me, and be able to break out and carve creative paths for themselves. I think that was the biggest thing for me. That was like, there's a whole community of people that are like me, that are also writing, that are interested in this type of thing as well. And so that was like the biggest thing as well. But I think what I also took from Caribbean writers was, how do I say this? The ability to kind of address themes in unique ways. I
Yeah.
feel like Caribbean authors oftentimes, like even though we are a huge community, we
Mm.
often carve out our own ways of talking about things, like whether that be immigrant struggles or whether that be talking about the islands. I mean, we just have such a interesting and different viewpoint. Like the first thing that comes to me, my mind, for example, is Jamaica Kincaid. Can't remember the name of the book right now, but where she talks about how the tourists start entering her island and then kind of describing them in these different ways that we don't necessarily, that I think
Mm.
white Caucasian folks that visit the islands don't necessarily think of themselves as, but we think of them like that, and that's how we see them. And I
Mm.
think that's a very different and a pository view that from like traditional publishing in general. And so that was kind of the tradition that I took away as well, was the ability to kind of carve out my own path and see things and know that the way that I see things is also just as valuable as the way that other people see things. So yeah.
Yeah, let's talk quickly about perspective, because not just the story, but the perspective of the protagonist in the story. And you
Mm.
said it earlier. There's not much white people in your story, in your stories. Not many white people, and there's a lot of your stories are infused with a lot of Caribbeanness, a lot of Jamaicanness, right? But yet still, you have such a wide readership, including a lot of white people. How do you
Mhm.
write a story that is very much Black centric, Caribbean centric, um, in such a way where it's still captivating and relatable to people who can't relate to that experience?
Mm. Mm, 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 mm.
Like on a
I
day-to-day
think
basis, this is not my lived experience at all, but this story is fire and I love it.
I think because for me, um, we all experience some same type of underlying aspect of the human condition. I
Mhm.
think even though lived experiences differ, I think we all still share broader, wider themes. I think everybody can relate to coming of age. Everybody can relate to loss. Everybody can relate to love. And even though the way that I might talk about those things are a bit different, those themes are still shared and communal in that way with multiple people and with a large like audience as well. And so that for me is the biggest thing. That's what I think really resonates with people. I talk about those things in very authentic and real ways. And
Mhm.
even though I might mention, I don't know, Jamaican food or Jamaican patois, and it goes over people's heads, the wide arc of the story is still very much in many ways relatable because people can still see themselves in it, even though it's not in every single instance.
Yeah, yeah, and I like that. As I said, you infuse other Jamaicanness. So even when you throw in a little bit of Creole here and there, it's like, yeah, because other people use their language, why we should use our language in our stuff. And I think that's what makes it authentic, not being afraid to say, that I'm a Jamaican writer. This is what I know and can relate to, and the type of stories I want to tell. And you're gonna like it. You're gonna love it. Okay. But let's talk about how can other young people. Because how old are you, Matthew?
22.
Matthew forgot his age at 22. You're too young. You're too young to forget your age. You only start forgetting your age when it drop off on the calendar. So at 22 years old, Matthew, you've already achieved so much, and it started by you making the decision that, listen, I'm going to publish my story, even though the first that shall not be named, you still wrote it and you still publish it. How can other, or what would you say to other young Jamaicans who are people across the Caribbean who are they're creative, they're interested in writing, and they want to put a story out there, but imposter syndrome is a hell of a thing. What would you say to them? What got you across that hump of I like books. I love storytelling. I think I'm a storyteller. I'm going to write a story and I'm going to publish that story, because that can be a roller coaster of emotions. And sometimes it can be so overwhelming that you don't even end up publishing, and then you live the rest of your life regretting they never do it. What got you to that point, and what would you say to somebody who's struggling with that?
Two things. I think the first thing is being able to lean on people and a community that supports you. For me,
Mhm.
that was multiple things. I mean, I talked a lot about the teachers that I had in high school that were a huge, huge, huge impact for me. Wattpad as well was also an amazing community as well. Like I still talk to a lot of readers and other writers on that platform that we support each other all the time. And I think that having like people in your corner that you can always lean on and talk to about these things is also huge. Also having an agent, God bless my agent, Leonica, because she's seen me through it all. And I don't think a lot of people have, to be honest. And yes,
I
with
mean, it's a
somebody
big
being in
deal to
front.
have an agent. I mean, come on. That's
Yeah,
that's
it is.
that's just a small feat. As I said, your debut novel hasn't even come out fully yet, and you already have big agents. Look at you, big up yourself.
Yes, I mean, and I love Leonica. I think she's incredible. I think she's amazing, and I really value her opinions. And I think something that I really value from her as well was, as I was saying before, her ability to take my feelings and kind of be like, okay, Matthew, these are the facts. This is what we can do. This is what we're going to do. And this is like, I believe in you. These people believe in you. There's a whole team, there's a whole audience that believe in you. And I think just having people in a corner that can reorient you and set you back on your path is so important.
So
And then the
community is
other thing,
important,
yeah, that's the
and
first
it'd be
thing.
great if
And
you
the
had
other,
an agent.
start looking. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, and the other thing for me is like, I think it's so important to, even though it can be really, really, really hard,
Mhm.
trust in yourself and trust in the story that you want to tell and trust in your talent and your experiences and just in you. And I think for me, I was able to do that really quickly because I was able to take away the stress and take away the expectations and the weight of it all by saying, even if one person needs this, I'll be content, I'll be fine, I'll be happy because this is a story that I love, this is a story that I want to tell. And so whatever you can do to kind of take away that stress and not try to think about other people and other perceptions and have them inform what you're doing, that's the road that you should go on. For me, it was being like, I'm okay if nobody reads this. For you, it might be something different. Maybe you're more into, I don't want to publish it just yet. I'll write the whole thing and edit it and sit with it and dwell on it for a while. So whatever you can do to kind of take out other people's perceptions of your work and be more, I don't need to say self-reliant, but develop that trust in yourself first, and that's what you should go and do as well.
Would you? Because the kind of success that you found on Wattpad is an anomaly. It's not the usual course
Mhm.
for writers on Wattpad. But that being said, would you still recommend that as a platform for young Caribbean writers or young people who are interested in writing? Because it's kind of a testing ground, isn't it? Where you can test out your
Mhm.
ideas and your stories, and then the audience gives you feedback, and you can know, well, this is good, or this is not good, so good, or this is what works with the type of audience, or blah blah blah. But would you recommend it as a platform to publish on?
Absolutely. I think what the good thing about Wattpad is that it's very user driven, and
Mhm.
that's like very new in the publishing space in the writing world. And so the Wattpad creators, the people on the teams, they really allow stories to shine and grow organically, and that's what you really want in your story as well. So absolutely, I think you can make an account, click write, and start typing, and it's a very low commitment, right? And sometimes
Mm.
that's what we need. Sometimes you don't have to think about the long journey and the 10 steps that we have to take next, but we will start thinking about, okay, well, the page is open, there's a blank page right here, I have a keyboard, let's get going and see what happens. So absolutely.
Right. Somebody asked if on Wattpad if you should publish the whole novel or just a sample or an excerpt of it. How does it actually work on Wattpad?
That's a great question. You can publish a whole novel. Wattpad doesn't. own the work unless you sign a contract saying that they will own that work. So you can
Right.
publish the whole thing. I'd say that if you are planning on publishing more traditionally with like a publishing house, etc., there may be some pushback there because they like to have original content.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you can of course go back, you can edit things, you can change things. And also I'd say that sometimes excerpts, not sometimes, excerpts generally don't do well on Wattpad. So if you really want to try to build an audience there,
Yeah.
I suggest doing the whole book, and then you can always revisit and change things. And if your agent and if your publishing house really believes in the story and they believe in your metrics, for example, then it shouldn't be a problem and you grow anyway.
Right. So you go on, you publish your novel, and then maybe at a later time, if it blows up, if it blow up like yours blew up, then that's another conversation. But for right now, you publish the whole novel. Question: Why did you change from Wicked Wild Wonderful to Until We Break? Was that a decision you made with your agents? Is the novel significantly different, or is there something different from the original iteration that went viral on Wattpad?
Good question. I don't get asked that a lot, actually. And you're absolutely right. I changed it because the story changed so drastically. Like I
Mm.
feel like when I started writing in 2018 to when I got the publishing deal, and I mean now it's 2022 and the book is coming out, right? So my writing has grown and changed and improved a lot. And I was able to go back into the story, and I mean I pulled out entire characters, I changed the entire art. And so I really wanted a title that would represent the change that the novel had gone through. And on top of that, I, at the time, loved the alliteration. It was wonderful, the W's, but I realized that it was very hard for people to pronounce. People would mix it up. So I was like, just to make it easier as well, I think it was also like a huge reason I wanted to change the title. So those were the two reasons for sure.
So what is the significance behind the title Until We Break?
Well, there's a line in the novel very early on, actually, where
Mm.
I'll just say it. I think it's fine. Where Naomi is kind of describing to Saint, who's the other protagonist in the book, that for her, dance is a thing that she does continuously. And she does it until, and that's where it ends.
And
So
that's
that's why I kind of went with, yeah, I went with Until We Break because in the novel, there's a huge theme of breaking and repairing and coming back together, whether that be physically, mentally, emotionally.
mm,
And so that's where the break comes in. But for Naomi, also, like, until is like how she sees her ballet journey and her dancing journey. She just keeps going until, and there's really no end for her there until she breaks eventually.
okay. So coming on to the final questions now, how did you we talked about your agent before, but let's get into how do you find an agent? How do you Is
Uh,
it that you go out seeking an agent? Do they seek you? How do you actually find an agent?
so you're right both ways. You can seek agents, and sometimes agents approach you. Like for me, for example, I was on Wattpad and I had a following and a platform and an audience and a readership. So, and there are agents that I'd say scan the platform and look for upcoming talent to represent. So
Mhm.
that's like one way that you can get approached. But for the agent that I have right now, I sought her out. I think Twitter is a great resource. There's also some amazing websites whose names are evading me right now because I haven't visited them in a while. But where agents just like send us open pitches and be like, "Hey, I'm an agent with X and X
Yeah.
company or organization, and I'm looking for these types of titles from these types of writers." And then you can send in your pitches and you can pitch your story to them, you give them your bio, etc., and then they can give you feedback and sign you, hopefully.
Yeah.
So Twitter is definitely the main one for sure. Get on Twitter and get on like publishing Twitter and start following agents there, and then you'll see like there's a whole community of people that are always looking for new talent.
Yeah, so you said community a couple of times now, and I want people to understand how important having a community is for building any kind of brand in
Mhm.
the digital space, because you wouldn't have gotten here if it wasn't for your community that you developed on Wattpad, and then the community that you have over on Twitter, because they were reposting and resharing, and it kind of went a little bit crazy over there. Um, as well. So when it comes to your agent though, how much cut you get to table? How much of the money you keep, or how much of the money she keep, or how much money the publishing people then keep?
That's a good question, but one that I don't think I can answer. I think if you would like to know about industry standards,
Yeah.
Google exists, and you might want to
You
look
don't,
into
you
some.
don't, you don't. Is it that you don't know? You just don't want to tell me.
No, I know, but I just can't.
You can't say contractual obligations. You can't tell people. Okay, all right, no problem.
A lot of contracts have been signed, a lot of NDAs.
But would you recommend having an agent though, or would you recommend just free publishing, because you can publish your own book on Amazon and other platforms. So would you recommend getting an agent, or would you recommend just publishing and then wait until you get to a certain point, then you get an agent?
You know what? I think to get an agent ASAP. As soon as you realize that you want to take writing seriously, immediately start looking for an agent, because the fact is, even though your publishers believe in you, they are a business and they're taking your work and they want to sell it and make money from it. And they're looking out for you, but really they're looking out for themselves and the longevity of their organization. Naturally,
Yeah.
that's how business works.
Yeah.
But your literary agent is forever, always 100% in your corner. And I think that's just the most important thing. They're looking out for you, primarily you, and that's what you really want. And they have all the industry insights that you need, etc. And they will like look over your contracts for you. They'll always give you good advice, to the best of their knowledge at least. And so, yeah, get an agent immediately. ASAP.
Immediately. All right then, Matthew. What are some, and this is the final question, in terms of, and going back to Wattpad, because I said you've been all over the place. I've seen you do interviews, and I've seen you, lots of articles being written up about you. How were you able to, because it's all good getting recognition, but if you can't convert that into something tangible, then it becomes a problem. So how are you converting all of that attention that you've garnered from going viral on Wattpad and getting the awards? And so how are you converting that to, and when I say tangible, I mean money. How are you converting that to actual money, or opportunities to earn money as a writer?
Good question. Well, I think for me that my main priority right now is continuing and having longevity for the story that I want to tell. So I'm in it for the long run, and I don't want to say too much, but I am working on new projects, and I think that's the biggest thing for me is that by the time this is out and by the time this has all the recognition and everything that is coming from it, the next one is also will be on its way. And at least in the industry wise, it will be getting some buzz there as well. And that's the main thing for me. And then also at the same time, still in school, still trying to get that degree. So like that's another huge thing for me. But I think that's probably the main thing. Just trying to like be in it for the long run and making sure that okay, this is one thing that I'm doing now, and then from the push that I have from this, we're funneling that straight into the next project, which should be bigger, better, etc.
Cool. So you're generating opportunities off of that, and then you're using that opportunity to generate more opportunities. Pretty much that's what you're doing. So you have projects and stuff in the pipeline that you're top secret, can't tell us yet. But we look forward. Can I say I'm just so proud of you? When do you finish school?
Next year, so May 2023.
May 2023. Yeah. And what's the plan after you finish school? Well, apart from literary superstardom, what's the plan? Are you coming back to Jamaica? Are you staying in Canada? What you doing?
That's a great question. When I figure that out, we'll be
you're not really sure yet. Yeah.
Not sure. I'm putting all of that off. I'm just trying to, live in the moment and take things day at a time and then finish, and then we'll see where the wind takes me.
One last question. Why are all your pictures so moody? You have this
are they?
serious face in every single picture. I cannot find one picture of Matthew where he's smiling. What's up with that?
It's funny that you said that because people always say that my personality isn't like that. Like I'm not that.
It doesn't match your pictures at all.
Which I think is very funny, but I don't know. I guess that's just the vibe of my Instagram.
All right, Matthew, I'm so proud of you. Congratulations again on
Thank
everything
you.
that has happened in really such a relative short period of time, and that you've been able to parlay that into other opportunities for yourself. Hope to see you on Oprah's book club, right?
Let's
Sitting
go.
down on the chair talking to
Let's
Miss
go.
Oprah. Yes. And I just hope you make a lot of money. Just make a lot of money and live an awesome life. Thank you so much for joining
Thank
me
you.
on the show. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Like, thank you so much. Like, I love the platform. Love talking to you. This has been a great conversation. And yes, thank you.
All right, Matthew, thank you so much. It's always great to see Jamaican people, Black people, Caribbean people in these very not um, friendly spaces, let's just say, making it. And you know what I say? Cream rise to the top, a cream rise to the top, let me say. Okay, just making it and doing awesome things and being fabulous. But guys, that is our show today. Coming up next week, I am talking to Damar, and I don't want to mispronounce his name, Damar Hutchinson. He is the CEO of Traveler Taxi, and they just released an app, and that app is revolutionizing how well private transportation, let's just say. So he's gonna come on the show. He's gonna talk about apps, but really what he's going to talk about is mobile first marketing and how that can really grow a small business like Traveler. So come back again next week when we talk to Damar Hutchison. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you want to know more about Digital Jamaica, the stories we tell, the people we feature, and kind of what the purpose of this platform is, visit our website www.thedigitaljamaica.com. And if you are a Caribbean person, whether living in the Caribbean or in the diaspora, you're in the tech and you're in the digital space, and you have a story that you want to share or an opinion that you want to share, some expertise that you want to share, we'd love to have you on the show. You can go to the website, thedigitaljamaica.com/live, and you can sign up to be on the show. All right, guys, thank you so much, and I will see you again next week.